Why is my tongue blue? Is my tongue blue?
It's just like white.
This man mad dehydrated. What is up, miners, whiners, and cheesy one-liners? Thanks for sitting down at the messy desk this week with me. As you might notice, we're in a new but equally messy desk. We got a new view here. If I lunge to the side, you can see I got a beautiful girl behind me drawing some beautiful artwork. I'll put links to that down below. Anyway, don't want to waste too much time. Today, I want to talk to you about pickups. Now, before you go getting your patch cables in a bunch, I'm not talking about driving big Chevys down to dry levees. I'm not talking about picking up chicks or whatever the fuck Roosh V is up to these days. Don't worry, you can breathe easy. We're not stepping out of our comfort zone. Oh, thank God. We're talking about the Octatrack. We're talking about pickup machines. What can pickup machines do for us? How are they useful? How can they be applied to a workflow? If you're like me and you haven't read the manual, which is super cool and very smart, you should keep doing that. You might think that pickup machines are just loopers. You might think of them as just loopers. And you wouldn't necessarily be wrong. But for this video, I read the manual, and the way that the manual defines them is a little different. The manual defines them as an alternative form of sampling. So with that knowledge in mind, what can we do with pickup machines to practically improve our music, help our workflow, and ultimately help us make less garbage fire trash music that we record 8 bars of before turning off our computers and having a nice cry? Let's talk about it. Okay, so like I said at the beginning of this video, if you're like me and you haven't read the manual, you might have stayed away from pickup machines because, I don't know, they're like loopers, but they're kind of confusing in their operation. And once you figured out how to record a loop, you hit stop here and the pickup machine stops playing and you hit play and nothing starts playing. Oh my God, it's gone forever. It's not, by the way, it's just a weird way that these are handled. You might feel like you don't really know what to do with pickup machines. You're not really sure what their use is. And for me, for a long time, I kind of just used them as loopers, literally as just loopers, as a tool to make ambient music, because the way I make ambient music, it's very unscientific. I just record a bunch of fiddly diddly loops into a looper, hope it sounds good, and if it doesn't, I just erase it and I try again until it sounds not completely miserable, and I just keep doing that, and that's how music gets made. So that's how I used them for a long time, and I kind of just powered my way through all the stuff I didn't understand. I hit stop, and then if I hit play again, they stopped playing. I always assumed that meant that they were gone. That's not what that means. You just have to hit play right here again to get them started. So that's a nice little bit of knowledge. But for a long time, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just never hit stop. I'll just keep going. It's a good methodology for life in general. But after sitting down and reading the manual and kind of forcing myself to try to use them in more interesting ways, they've become a very interesting tool for me in that they've kind of eliminated the need that I feel to sample someone else's stuff. A lot of what I like to do for like the first 2 years that I've used this thing is sample someone else's music, put my own shit under it, slice it myself, interpret it in my own way, have a lot of fun, and turn off the machine at the end of the day. But what I've gotten really into doing recently, as I mentioned in my previous video all about resampling, is resampling myself and taking the same sonic material and reconstituting it in as many ways as possible. And pickup machines are actually really fantastic at helping you do that. So let's dive into a couple cases where pickup machines can be really useful just as general loopers, and then we'll talk about the kind of more robust resampling thing that I've been doing. Now, pickup machines are considered an alternate form of sampling, so they use the same settings, they pull from the same settings. If you place a pickup machine on a track and you're wondering what it's going to sample from, you just need to look at your recording setup. So for instance, if I wanted to record internally, I wanted to record track 3. I could turn all these off, do track 3, and we have that, and we're good. And it kind of works as normal. Similarly, the mode you have here, trig 1, 1, 2, hold, it affects how looping works. So these 3 buttons become new controls when you are using a pickup machine. Record 1 becomes pickup plus, so record. Record 2 becomes play and stop, and record 3 becomes erase. My mode right now is hold. So if I hold that, it's going to start recording. I take it off, and now it's playing. And it's playing what I recorded, which is, in this case, nothing. If I want to stop it, it's stopped now. If I want to erase it, erase yes, and it's gone now. Because it's just an alternate form of sampling, it references the audio buffers. If I come into the audio editor here and I start holding down, you'll see that it's now recording. If I take my finger off, it's now playing through there, and we can watch that. And we can see what audio is coming in, if there was audio. Of course, there is not at the moment. Let's go ahead and stop it. The power of this, the power that comes from this, is the ability to save a sample directly from a pickup machine. So if you layer a big loop in there and you want to save it, it's as simple as coming into your audio editor, file, and save an assigned sample like you normally would. Or I've recently learned if you hit function and record edit, it'll say edit this recording, save this recording, whatever. You can hit save this recording, save it as whatever, and then you can do the same assigning thing. Really useful if you just want to save something really quick and on the fly. So that is a crazy fast rundown on how pickup machines work. I don't want this to be a how do pickup machines work tutorial. I want this to be a kind of exploration of, we know how pickup machines work. We have read the manual. We did that legwork. Now that we've read the manual, what do we do with these things? What do we do with this knowledge? That's what I want this video to be about. So now that we've covered really mega quick, the basics of how this works, let's go ahead and jump back to pattern 1 here. And we can talk about the fun stuff, which for me, this might even sound like a rehashing of last week's video, is all about resampling. I have a pattern here and I'm going to play it for you. And then, as we always do, we're going to break down what's going on and we'll talk about how pickup machines have kind of worked their way into this. So let's take a listen. Now, as per usual, this isn't going to be a full track breakdown, although if you are interested in that, I have a full track breakdown of this pattern on my Patreon. Hit the link down there if you want to see me very hastily and dejectedly explain what I did in this shitty pattern. But it was really instructional in kind of helping me grok what I can use pickup machines for in my workflow. Now, if you're an astute viewer, which, let's be real, all my viewers are, am I right? Smartest Octa children in the world. You'll look at my Octatrack and you'll see that these are all flex machines and of course a master. So what the hell, Octadad? That's false advertising. That's clickbait. You're a liar. I'm a YouTuber now. I got a clickbait. But what really is going on here is that what started as a couple pickup machines and me doing some looping then turned into me saving those as samples, and now I'm using flex machines to play them back. So the source of all of these things came from pickup machines. So with that out of the way, let's start diving into it. So if you notice here, I have this track 6. DNPU. That's my funny way of saying it's a Digatone pickup machine. So let's listen to what's going on here. It's not very good. Very cool. What I did there was this was actually kind of funny. I had an old pattern on the Digatone that I was doing nothing with. And so I just let it play and recorded it with the pickup machine and just started overdubbing at random. I wasn't even listening to what was happening. I was just pressing the plus button randomly. And I got this weird kind of stuff. And then after I got this sort of weird underlayer, I started playing random melodies on top of it. And I ended up with that. And it's not very good. But the fun thing about not very good melodic loops is you can slice them into something a little more interesting. So if we come into the slice menu and we zoom out here, you can see I have quite a bit of slices. I used a slice grid on this and I sequenced it and it sounds like this. And I pitched it down, of course. It's funny in music how one thing can kind of make you latch on to something, because I felt nothing about this loop, literally nothing. And I was like, okay, this is going to be one of those projects where I just shut it down and I start again. But then I came across this slice. And there's something, again, that I've talked about in my videos before, something kind of yearning and wistful and it's a reaching out type beat. And I knew I wanted to do something with that, so I kept it going. And so what I did was, while this was playing, I used another pickup machine to make a loop that worked in context with this first loop. And that is DNPU2. Speaking of PU2s, my dog's been having some tummy troubles recently. If you have a dog, I would not recommend having a dog with tummy troubles. You might be saying, I can't control that. And I would say that's a defeatist attitude. But listen, after a couple of days of my dog absolutely shitting his brains out, I'm feeling kind of defeatist too. So I empathize with you there. But nevertheless, here we are in track 5. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like. Cool. So I just started recording melodies that worked in context with that first loop, kind of with no care at all to how it sounded in isolation. And this is an important thing I want to touch on a little bit. I think it's really easy to get focused on making each individual piece of a song work right away. Like it's I think a natural tendency to think, oh, this snare sounds like shit, or even this drum loop sounds like shit, or this melodic loop in this instance sounds like garbage. But I've really learned recently to kind of have a patience and understand that very easily and kind of trivially, you can take shitty material and reconstitute it to be something much more useful. Whenever I'm recording like a loop or whatever, whenever I'm working on anything these days, if it's shitty, instead of panicking and being like,
oh, I'm bad at music and I should just stop and sell all my shit and apologize to my wife and kids,
I just tell myself, hey man, I can probably slice this and make it something half decent. So if you do find yourself agonizing over making every little piece of your music work, try to relax and tell yourself, it's no big deal. It's okay if it's a piece of shit, because we can take that piece of shit and we can chip at it with a little tiny Minecraft pickaxe. And from that shit, we'll get netherite or whatever. I'm just completing the analogy at this point. Don't worry so much, ultimately. I worry about her leaving me. Look at that. She's like the angel on my shoulder, literally. Anyway, there's that loop. And I sequenced that as well. And it sounds like this with it. You can see very quickly how easily it is to start stacking these pickup machine loops on top of each other and have it all be very self-contained. Because beforehand, I would always think, oh, I'd like to have a loop in here, but I would record it, in an external looper, or I wouldn't want to mess with the Octatrack loopers because they were confusing and weird to me. And just because I'm dumb and I never read the manual, I assumed you'd have to manually resample it, and I don't have to mess with sampling because sampling is kind of hard on the Octatrack, kind of weird. I might do a video on that, by the way. I've had multiple students come to me saying, please help me figure out sampling on this fucking thing. It's so obtuse, and believe me, even with someone with years on this thing, it still leads to some head scratchers. So I just kind of wrote it off. But when I took the time to learn what pickup machines did and how they could be used, it sort of broke that barrier for me, and I kind of just got over myself. And the results are really interesting. So if we come here, I have one more DNPU. It sounds like this. Now, this is where things start getting interesting here. Disregard the first 20 minutes of this video. This is where things start getting really interesting. You might notice that sounds kind of familiar, and you'd be right. Again, great job. Very proud of you. You got good ears, nice ears, normal-sized ears. Don't believe what the kids at school are telling you. Everybody has big ears because you have a tiny head. It's just how it works, unless you're me, in which case you have this thing. Anyway, what I did was I used a pickup machine here to loop the output of these two sequenced loops. So I recorded a pickup machine loop here, pickup machine loop here, sequenced one here, and now this is recording the output of both of those. So it's recording literally this. Right? I hope I'm making sense here. And so I wanted to do more than just slice on this track in particular. I wanted it to be a little less choppy, a little less obvious, like sequenced thing going on, and I want it to be kind of a swelling layer going on. I utilized a new thing I've been doing recently, which is keeping time stretching on and then turning the rate down real slow. You start getting these juicy artifacts, these really delicious stretching and tearing. It just sounds wonderful. It sounds like this. And now that's being heavily filtered. If I open up that filter, you're going to hear just how gnarly this sounds. But filtered, it has such a... it sort of reinforces the other two elements, and it provides a bed under everything else. And that's something I like to do very often when I have a lot of obvious chopped and sequenced layers, is put something kind of relatively constant under it to disguise the start-stoppy nature of everything else. So it all feels, rather than a bunch of disconnected loops, it all sounds like kind of one cohesive piece. Now that's the totality of what I did with melodic loops, but I didn't stop there. I had a very basic drum beat going on, just a kick snare kind of thing, and I used a pickup machine to loop that. And in this instance, you don't need to use a pickup machine. You can just resample. But I thought, why not? I use a pickup machine, and it sounds like this. And again, I did that thing where we take the rate and we turn it way down, but we keep time stretching on, and it gives this really fucked up, weird, kind of shuffly feeling. Let me make sure it's on. Now that sounds like nothing without the other bits of the song. It sounds very sloppy and disconnected, but when you put in these other elements here, particularly this snare here, now, those weird sounds are their own thing with some trigger conditions and everything. Again, if you're curious, the link to my Patreon's down there. I also include a sample pack of these weird sounds and all these loops and everything for free. So check that out if you want. It's a very kind of interesting and sort of groundbreaking feeling for me in my explorations of the Octatrack. But nevertheless, I did one more thing, which is here I resampled that resampled bit and turned the rate down even slower, and it sounds like this. So again, this is less of a pickup machine thing and more of a resampling thing. But my point here ultimately is not use pickup machines for everything, right? My point is use pickup machines to get a start and then use that to kind of inform where you take your track from there. I started with these 3 loops here. And I knew I wanted a snare, that downbeat snare, gotta have it. Yep. Never be without it. Then everything else just comes. So that's kind of it. Pickup machines are, at the end of the day, really not something that complicated. I think we all have a tendency with this box to get very confused very easily and scared very easily because it's so robust and weird and ambiguous. But really what they are built-in loopers that are meant to easily create samples for you, basically. They're meant to take your loops of whatever form they may be and be saved as that. Because if you're just trying to sample directly, you can't loop, right? It's going to just overwrite itself. That's the stated use. And for me, in this instance, they're machines, literally, they're workhorses for resampling. And that, as you know, is kind of been my kick for the moment. So that has sort of been my experience with these things. I'm sure that there's some more creative stuff you could do. I think there's something to be said for just having up to 8 loopers independently that can be played at independent speeds and have effects be live processed, and you can start doing weird live sampling stuff. So you can get into some really powerful stuff. But for me, for my money, this is the way that it will most meaningfully be implemented into my workflow. And so that's what I wanted to share for you. So in any case, I wanted to thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great holiday season, and I hope you have an even better New Year's. I'm going to be back next week with a new video. Going to have my patrons vote on that. So link down there if you want to join in on that. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel. This is The Messy Desk. This is some messy hair, and I love you more than I love using a part of the Octatrack in exactly its intended way. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Peace.